Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. This episode of Entree Architect Podcast is supported by our generous sponsors, BetterHelp and Arcat.com. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to Entree Architect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Ray Brown is a seasoned business coach and entrepreneur who has built and sold several successful enterprises. After relocating from Scotland to Australia in 2005, Ray has dedicated his expertise to coaching startups, major banks, technology firms, top executives, and international architecture firms. Ray's also the founder of Archibiz. You may have heard them, Archibiz. It's an international education program aimed at bridging the crucial gap in business education for architects. Through Archibiz, Ray empowers architects to develop profitable and sustainable practices without compromising design excellence. In other words, Ray is an ally here at Entre Architect. Anybody who's working to help architects build better businesses is an ally to me and to Entre Architect. So it's exciting to have you here, Ray. Welcome back to the Entre Architect podcast.
Oh, Mark, it's great to be here. And as we were saying just before we started, it's great to be in an ecosystem that's so abundant in its thinking. There's a big job to be done in helping architects understand business a little bit better and sort of break through the narrative of nobody teaches us about business. So anybody that's doing that is great. And it's good to be part of the podcast again.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. It is a very big world, and there are hundreds of thousands of architects who need our services. And so anybody who's out there working hard to help architects be more successful is a friend of mine. Ray's been here before. He was episode 444. We talked about business coaching, specifically business coaching for architects. So if you want to hear Ray's full origin story, go back to episode 444 and listen to the entire episode, and you'll also get his origin story. But Ray, rather than diving into the entire story, why don't you just share a little bit about yourself, provide some context for our conversation here?
Yeah, great. So I had a long business career in Scotland, came to Australia with my family in 2005. I started a sailing business, but also had a business coaching company. I did that for a number of years, almost 20 years I've been a business coach, but the last 5 years has been focusing on architects because I had a few architect clients and the problems were obvious that they were very good at architecture, but when it came to business, that wasn't just the strong point. And so for the last 5 years, we've been really trying to understand the pain of architects and how we can best help that. So it's been an evolution for us too. And we've evolved our product and our services and really undergoing another big shift at the moment.
Great. The website, if anybody wants to go check Ray's website out, it's archibiz.global if you're looking for them, archibiz.global. I'd like to focus our conversation, Ray, on fundamentals. I haven't talked about fundamentals in a while, but that's really the heart of it all. Architects are not trained in business at all unless they actively seek out that education. An architecture school does not teach business fundamentals. They teach some professional practice here and there. Some schools teach it better than others, but none of them teach business fundamentals. And I think the majority of architects that go to architecture school have this idea in their mind that they're going to start their own practice. Even if they end up working for other firms, I think they become architects thinking that someday I'd like to have my own firm. But they don't realize that when they start their firm, they're actually starting a business and they need to be educated in doing that. And so that was the birth of Entre Architect. That's the birth of Archibiz, to sort of fill that gap, to help architects learn these fundamentals. And so I'd love to have a conversation about that here, to just sort of remind architects who are doing it already what they need to know, but also some architects that may be thinking about launching architecture firms, the things that they really are required to know and do before they launch. Does that sound like a good conversation to have?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've made some of the same mistakes as architects make. So our original program was called Designing Architectural Practice Success, or internally we started calling it DAPS, and that's the classic mistake. We used language that wasn't familiar to people. It was difficult to understand until you explained it. And we've actually spent a lot of time looking at what's the language we need to use to attract architects, to get them thinking in the right way. And you used the word fundamentals. We've actually shifted a bit, and we're now speaking about foundations of business success, or the principles of business success. Because I think, like any building or any business, the way you operate the business, how you set it up and how you think about it, they are really the foundations. And architects, if any group, should know that if you don't get the foundations right, then you're going to build something that's not particularly stable. So everything that we are speaking about now is foundations. It's not the whole story, but it's the beginning. And I think for anybody just starting out, or whether they've been running a business for 10 years, the time is now to look at the foundations and see if they need to strengthen those foundations and fill in the gaps. And we speak about what we call unconscious incompetence. And that's just people not knowing what they don't know. So
Right.
at least it would bring them to the level of saying, well, we know these concepts, we've got an idea of what they kind of mean, and we know which ones we need to go and find out more about to help our business and where we may be weak. So I think if we can get architects to look inside, but look inside in the context of some sort of framework, because what we find is people go and do seminars and workshops, and whether that be in finance or project management software, whatever it is. But then how do you bring that back into the practice in some sort of holistic way, rather than sort of individual specialities that can be quite complex and maybe going deeper than they need to go. So I think the holistic, practical, those are the two words that we've tried to evolve, is how do we get something that's a bit more holistic, and how do we get something that's really practical for people to implement?
Right. Architects, especially small firm architects, are doing so many different tasks, right? They're wearing so many hats. And often that's their biggest struggle, is that they start these firms without understanding the foundations of business, and then they struggle their entire careers, right? Trying to get the cash flow right and trying to attract the right clients and ending up with clients that are not right for them. And it becomes this onward struggle that's very difficult to get out of once you're into it. And so what would you say, Ray, are the basics, right? What are the basic fundamentals, the foundations, as you call them, that architects need to know in order to get their businesses running smoothly so they can be the best architects they can be?
Well, I think the first thing is to break through the narrative and the sort of limiting beliefs that surround architecture. No one has taught us about architecture. No one has taught us about business. We hear that over and over again. So what? Every business owner starts off, whether it doesn't matter what business they're in, they need to learn about business. So putting that up as a barrier and saying, I'm an architect, not a business person, or the other limiting belief is that, and this comes, I think, from architectural schools, if we do good architecture, that will lead to good business. So good architecture, and we win a few awards, and then we sit by the phone, and the phone's going to ring, and that leads to definite frustration and disillusionment. And another problem that we find as well is a lot of the information that they get and the thinking that they've got is, if I could just get more projects, that will solve all my problems. And it can sometimes make things worse because you don't have the systems and processes within the practice to build a sustainable business on. So we've got a number of frameworks that we use, but one is specialize, systemize, and then scale. And we call that the sort of mountain of sustainable success. So quite often architects will specialize, and they're going to be in residential or commercial or a mix of the two. But what they tend to do is they jump the mountain, and they scale. They suddenly got 5 people or 10 people or however many. And then the problem then is, how do you retrofit the systems and processes that you need? And that's why people like Entre Architect and ourselves have got plenty of work to do, because the systems and processes are just not there. And we start people off by saying, okay, marketing is really important, but it's only one aspect of running a business. And we get people to start thinking about the practice on 4 levels. We call it the 4 Ps. So the practice as a whole. How is this practice operating? Where does it fit in the market? What does it look like as a practice? What are the values, the vision, and the culture of the practice as a whole? And then we've got the project. So how do we run the projects better? And we find this is a very interesting place, and a place where people can really get rich rewards if they run their projects better. We find so much lack of transparency around things like margins. And then we spend a lot of time speaking about charge-out rates, and we really hate the concept of charge-out rates. We really like to speak about margin. What's the difference between what it costs you to do a job and what fee are you being paid? Keep it really simple, like most businesses do. And if you do that and you understand your margins and you control the margins, typically we find that the projects become more profitable. And you actually know which projects are profitable and which are not, because that's often not clear if costs are spread across projects, and some of the software that's available don't help. And we're into using multiples and things. So anything that can clarify and simplify and make the processes and outcomes transparent, and we encourage people around the project. And then the third thing is the people. So how do you manage the people? How do you get the right people? How do you hold on to the right people? How do you motivate and energize people? And ideally tie the individual's vision to that of the company. Then you've got the ideal situation. And we speak another framework that we use is around really getting alignment first. So if you don't have alignment in your business, then you can't expect commitment. And in an ideal world, you want people to be anticipating the future for the business, for their career. Good place to work. We see great transformations in practices that it just feels like hard work and long hours. And then we see them, speaking to a client in Perth just the other day, they were bouncing along the bottom. They're now making 30% net after paying a good salary to it's a husband and wife team. And the kicker in the last conversation I had, they're now stopping work on a Friday at 12 o'clock. Okay. Because they're so well organized, they can get their work done in 4.5 days, get the stuff out, and they're making this handsome profit. So it's there to be done. We're not looking for a unicorn here. We're looking to replicate what's happening over and over again in practices that are well run. And then the fourth P is perception. So perception, we struggle to get a fourth P, but perception kind of covers it. It's around what's the perception of the practice internally and externally? Is it what you need it to be? Are people telling the story of your practice in a way that's consistent with everybody telling the same story, the story that people want? And story is really important and becoming more and more important, I think, in terms of things like website. Does your website tell the right story? Or do you go on your website and there's a hero picture of a building on the homepage? It drives me nuts that people don't use their website to convey a message really quickly that this is who we are, this is what we do. And most importantly, these are the problems we solve for our clients. Unless you get that across quickly, people are going to go to your competition because your competition can produce, sorry to tell you, but the competition can probably produce a building and a construction that's very similar to what you can do. Maybe has its own edge, but clients are interested much more than that. They've got a problem. They need that solved, and they want it to be solved by the best person that holistically thinks about their problem, not just the project itself. So those are the 4 Ps.
I love that. I love the simplicity of that. Easy to remember: practice, projects, people, and perception. So our listeners are hearing you, listening to what you're saying. They're all sort of recognizing these things that they've heard over and over again from us. What would you say to an architect that is listening, who's been practicing for maybe 10 years? They're struggling because some of these pieces are not fixed. Where should they start? How do they sort of evaluate where they are in order to understand where within this framework that they should start?
Well, I think that comes back to the unconscious incompetence thing. They don't really know where to look. So I think that's why we've come to the point where we feel that this foundational business education is such a big... We didn't have that either. We were doing coaching and going in, and we still have 30 or 40 retained clients right at the moment. So every day we are learning about the issues in architectural practices and what we need to do to put it right. And what I would say is every practice is different. Okay, so the danger is that people focus on one area of the business, marketing or sales, or well, we need some more people. Without let's say getting more people, for instance, until you've got the concept of capacity and how much you can produce with the people you've got, why would you get more people? Because quite often we meet practices that they don't really have a strategy. They work on what we call get busy, get help. Okay, so they're really busy and we've got a new project came in. The only solution is to go and get more people. So that is just one aspect of this foundational understanding. So my advice to any architect would be, wherever you get it, go and get that foundational education, because then you can effectively use people like Business of Architecture and Entre Architect, and the consultants are ready to help architects, but help is not on its own is not enough. Your practice is very different from every other practice. And I think we've got to be a little bit careful that we don't speak to consultants who's what they say, that if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Okay, so your problem may be different to the practice down the way. So it's important to sit back, look at the business as a whole and the practice as a whole, get that foundational understanding of the concept. Okay, even at the level. So we sometimes say the secret sauce is the monthly board meeting. So we encourage business owners and practice leaders. They've got to spend time once a month thinking strategically. So this is the working on the business, not in the business. And I think to your question, where do you start? Well, you start with that meeting. Let's just set up that meeting. We're going to meet in the third week of the month on the third Tuesday at 2:00.
Explain what that means, because you've talked about that in our last episode that we talked together at 444 with business coaching. You talked about your board meetings. Can you dive into that a little bit and explain what that means?
Absolutely. So sometimes we speak to people about board meetings and they think about rooms full of people that look like me in pinstripe suits and, oak paneled rooms. It's not that. We can't find a better name than board meeting. But even if you're a husband and wife or you're just on your own and you're a sole trader, it's a time to look at the business, and we provide people with a structure to have that meeting. So it's finance. So finance is your scorecard. Where are you winning? Where are you losing? And you need effective reporting at that level to say, this is working, that's not working, need a bit more of this or that, or here's where the problem is. In finance, we're looking at not just the historical story, we're looking at the forward forecasting. What does the next 6 months, the year look like? And that we find is really reassuring for practice owners. They get out of the moment and they get into the future and the what if and where do we need work and where are we going to be too busy and all that. So finance first. Then operations, so that's the project, how the project's running, not the detail of the projects, which is where architects get stuck, but the higher level, the margins, just how projects are running generally, how the people, how's morale in the office. Sometimes that never gets thought about. Have we done the reviews of the staff? Have we had that coffee with somebody that's maybe struggling a wee bit? So that's operation. Then sales and marketing. Okay, sales and marketing is obviously pipeline, how many proposals we're putting out, how many wins are we getting, where can we improve our fee proposal document, our process, sales process. We've just done a really good interview with Tyler Samola about sales, and he's got a really good framework. So do we around sales. But most architects would say framework around sales, what does that mean? Okay, so in the board meeting, we're evaluating how's that working. Are we getting enough leads? We may be getting the leads, but not converting. And then the last part is what projects are happening in the business. So these are time limited, standalone, might be new software, it might be a new office, it might be whatever. But if you don't have that monthly meeting, those conversations get spread across the month, if they happen at all. And the chances are it's a corridor conversation, not the right people are in the room, etc., etc. So getting that monthly meeting with a set of minutes that says next month we can look back and did we do what we said we'd do? No, it's an hour and a half per month. Our clients tell us that's the most valuable offer that we can give to them. If we can get that meeting running right, then we can see the results I was with a board meeting yesterday, a client in Perth, quite a big business, 40 people, and they've been in business for like 20 years, I think. And suddenly they're now making profit, a month and then another month. And last month was probably the most profitable months I've ever had. And it's really interesting that they were sort of saying, oh yeah, but that was an exceptional month and this happened and we had a variation. And you can't deny the trend. It was losing money in the first 6 months of the financial year. Second half is looking really good. Okay, so something's working. And it's sometimes really hard to pinpoint what did we actually do to make the difference in the business. So a lot of people viewing will have come across the Atomic Habits book, the aggregation of incremental change. So it's small changes in your business over time will give you the results. And if you do it across the 4 Ps and you have a monthly board meeting, you're well on the way to running a business. And that structure works in any kind of business. We're not speaking something specific for architects. That's how a business needs to run to be successful.
Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. Architects, listen up. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world and is going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. I know this community of small firm architects very well, and I see many of you struggling. That's why I reached out to this episode's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, And by filling out just a few questions, BetterHelp can match you with a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in the show notes. It's betterhelp.com/architect. Just use that link, betterhelp.com/architect. Clicking that link helps support this podcast, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. If you need someone to talk to, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the show notes or visit betterhelp.com/architect. That's betterhelp.com/architect. Thank you to BetterHelp for supporting this podcast and for supporting our community of small firm architects. ARCAT's Spec Wizard is the tool that will help you save time writing specifications. Going through the manufacturer's specification line by line to find the right product leads to frustration and errors. And that's where Spec Wizard comes in. It's a free, patented tool that allows you to select products and options error-free and generate a 3-part specification in minutes. Go to arcat.com, that's ARCAT.com, and try Spec Wizard today. And, I talked earlier about the many, many hats that we're all wearing, and having this dedicated monthly meeting gives you that time and focus to focus on your business and be able to review all of the pieces of the 4 Ps to make sure that they are running smooth and they're doing the things that they need to do. I also appreciate your description of what architects can do to get started and understand where their issue is. When I first launched my architecture firm with my wife, we launched the firm, we got a bunch of new projects, we became successful, and then we plateaued. And we plateaued for like 2 years. We just could not grow. We just could not figure out how to grow. And so I reached out to find some education. And so I reached out to my community college. There was nothing for architecture at the time. So I reached out to my community college. I signed up for a program called the Academy of Entrepreneurial Excellence, which ended up inspiring much of what EntreArchitect had become later in my career. But through that program, it was a 15-week program, and it was similar to what you're talking about and what we've done at EntreArchitect, where you go through each fundamental of business. So each of the 15 weeks was focused on one fundamental of business. And every week I would go to this class and I'd be so proud of myself when I've come home because I was doing it right, but I was still looking for this answer and I could not find the answer. And so I would come home and I would talk to Anne-Marie, my wife, and say, yay, we're doing this right. We've figured this out and we're doing this right. And the next week we'd go and I'd come back and I'd brag that, oh, we're doing this right. And we're doing this right. And then finally we got to the session on sales and having sales frameworks. And I realized that I had no sales framework as an architect. We had zero framework. We were great at branding. Everybody knew who we were. We were great at marketing. We were getting lots of potential clients and we would sending out proposals and we never followed up on those proposals. We never had any sort of framework to convert those proposals into projects. And when I discovered that, I'm like, oh, there's our solution, right? But it took that process of going through each fundamental in order to understand where you were weak. And so that step-by-step process of reviewing the fundamentals, both from an initial point of view, but also at that monthly board meeting, allows you to recognize where this is going really well. And these areas are the areas where we need to focus our issues and being able to predict what's coming down the line in order to make those changes before the crises happen. And that's how successful businesses become successful businesses, is predicting where those problems may be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the sales process is one. Sales is, we had one client who said to us, we don't want to use even the word sales, it's going to be something more. And I said, no, it's sales. It's sales. Sales is the bridge between someone's problem and your solution. And you're going to build a really, really good bridge. And you said something in just what you said there about the sales process. And we get this a lot, which is client comes in, you have the briefing meeting, you do this, you spend 3 days on putting a proposal together. And then you use the phrase, we send it out to the client.
Right, exactly.
If you do nothing else and you get nothing else from this podcast episode, please don't send out your proposals. Get your client in and present your proposal. Okay, that's a really fundamental change. And I would say 95% of architects that we speak to initially, they send, we send out the proposal. What do you think the client does? They go to the back page and see, how much is this going to cost me? Okay. And you lose complete control of the sales process. And you can see it in the client's faces, the penny dropping, that, well, maybe it would be a good idea to be doing that face to face and taking people through and doing the sales process, countering the objections, doing all the things that normal salespeople do naturally, but architects don't value that piece of the process. Therefore, I had a client in Brisbane over the last 2 months. Her conversion rate was 15%. Okay. A little bit of change to the process. She reckons it's somewhere now between 35 and 40%. So almost 1 in 2 she's converting because she's changed the process. Okay. That happens a lot. And so all the way through your business, you can improve your processes so you just get a better outcome.
You had mentioned earlier the concept of specialize, systematize, and scale are the steps of what you need to do. I think architects recognize today through the work that you do and the work that we do that systems are critical to successful businesses. The other two often are pushed back upon, right? Specialization, architects often, they want to be generalists. They want to be able to design anything, anywhere for anyone. And scale, there are several small firms and sole practitioners that don't want to grow, right? They almost want a lifestyle business. They want enough money to be able to continue designing and practicing as an architect, and that's all they want. So can you share more specifically about the specialization? Because that's really a deterrence to many architects that they refuse to specialize and focus on something specific. Can you talk a little bit more about your ideas on specialization?
Yeah, I think that's a hurdle to get over. And it doesn't matter which industry you're speaking about. I did quite a lot of work with financial planners, and they would say, we can do everybody. And they'd put their hands up like this. We can do someone who's got 100,000 in their super and someone's got 10 million in their super. We can do everything and anybody in between. What that means is that one person's getting too much and the other end is not getting enough. And you're not known for something that's really a specialism. So I think the key is, again, architects hate when we use the analogy of the car industry, but you've got to be positioned properly so that exactly the same as the car industry, you've got Suzuki, Ford and Rolls-Royce. There are not many people walking into a Rolls-Royce showroom looking for a Suzuki, okay? Because those businesses are really well positioned and everything backs up that positioning. The way the showroom looks, the service that follows up, obviously the price and definitely the product. So once you start specializing, then your positioning, and that's a whole other topic, but positioning around price, product, market, and service all become consistent. And then you can differentiate. Okay. If you're a generalist, you're just another architect. Okay. And it's down to, here's a picture of the buildings that we've done in the past, and your competition will be doing the same. Whereas once you're a specialist in an area, and it can be, you can have 2 or 3 specialisms, but you need some sort of boundaries. You need to know that when someone calls you up, very quickly you can tell whether these people are a fit for your practice or not. And we get a lot of tire kickers. We get a lot of phone calls from people who are not a fit. Well, that's just classic poor marketing. Okay. If you're finding that you're speaking to people who don't fit your values or don't fit your product profile, and then there's something wrong with your marketing. So we call it the tribe. Okay. It's not some people are better than others. You need to know your tribe. And the tribe has got to feel comfortable working with you and how you work and the type of products that you deliver. Because if they're comfortable, sales is very much a feeling process. And you need the clients to feel, yeah, these people understand me and these people work with people just like me. Okay. If you're a generalist, then it's really hard to nail that down. You become just a general architect then. And what makes you different? How do you tell your story in a way that the client says, okay, I feel more comfortable with Mark than I do with Mary, or vice versa. And that's very much an emotional choice quite often, not a logical or technical choice. It's just a feeling. To clients, we tell our clients that their prospects are looking for 2 things and buying 2 things. They buy confidence and perceived value. So in everything that you do, you need to make the client feel confident that you're expert in their area, confident that you're going to look after them, confident that you're going to deliver on budget on time, and that the value stacks up. Okay, so we have lots of clients who charge a lot more than the competition, but they get that higher price because they've got the process of convincing right, and telling the story right, and differentiating right. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah. Everything is easier when you specialize, right? All your marketing is targeted on one market. All of your branding is very specific. And like you said, your fees will be higher because when you are a generalist, you are perceived as a general architect. You should have general prices, right? If you are perceived as an expert, or if you're perceived as a specialist, you are perceived as an expert and therefore command a higher fee. And so everything works better when you specialize. And like you said, Ray, you don't have to specialize on only one thing. You can have more than one specialty, but it allows you to focus your market on one target market and command the highest fees you can. And everything throughout your entire firm gets easier because now you're focusing on one segment of the population.
Yeah, and that ties back to the conversation we had earlier about the websites and the messaging. I've got one client. The first thing you see in the website, obviously a nice picture of a building, but there's two boxes there. Are you a residential client or are you a commercial client? Click one or other of the boxes and then you're taken into an area that's of interest rather than having to dig through a website. Websites are a hobby horse of mine because they're just so badly done by most architects. They too much copy, too much about them and not enough about the client, not enough about the problem, all about the history and the people. And it's just got to be friendly and it's got to be attractive to your target market, not to you, not to your friends who are architects, not to your staff, definitely to the target market that you're looking to attract.
Ray, as we wrap up here, we're talking to thousands of small firm architect business owners. What would you say is the one thing that they should focus on today in order to build a better business for tomorrow?
You asked me this question the last time we met, so I've given a little bit of thought to this one this time. And it comes down to the difference between cash and profit. Okay, too many architects I meet, they're looking at how much money is in the bank account. And if they've got money, they feel good. If they're short of money, they don't feel so good. In that same month, they've made a significant profit. Okay. Profit is very different from cash. And I think from a financial perspective, getting that distinction, it's not that one's better than the other. They just are very different. And understanding the difference between profit and cash. I know I started in business. I didn't know what a profit and loss was until I was 38 and I'd had 3 businesses by that time. I left that to my accountant. Okay. Such a big mistake. So don't leave it to your accountant and understand the difference between cash and profit for sure.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I'll tell you, when you learn the difference between cash and profit, your life will get better. You'll be happier. You'll be more relaxed, right? Because you'll understand how and why it works. And it is the fuel. It's literally the fuel for the firm that you're dreaming of.
Absolutely. Yeah, just absolutely vital. And you don't have to be an accountant. You just have to learn the basics. Business is simple. We've had this conversation before. Business is very simple. It's like we use the analogy of snakes and ladders. But if you introduce a child to snakes and ladders without the 10 minutes instruction of how the game works, then they're not going to enjoy it. They're going to get bored. It's not going to be fun. And business is very similar.
His name is Ray Brown. Archibiz.global is a website. You can learn more about Ray and everything he's doing over there. Ray, you have a new program that you're launching. You want to talk a little bit about your new program?
Yeah, the program has been launched and it's called the Business Foundations Program. It's an 8-week self-study program, but it was recorded with a group of architects. So there is discussion. It's not just presentation of material. We've built on the back of our original program, which we've had 300 plus people go through, but we've added in some new elements. And we have 6 industry experts speaking about their specific area of expertise. We've also added a lot of the learning that we've had over the last 5 years working with architects. So Business Foundations program, it's there. We can add on coaching, but in terms of the conversation we've had today, it's a pretty good start to get that broad spectrum understanding of business and the foundations that you need to look to the future and hopefully build a successful practice.
All right. Business Foundations Program. You can learn more about that at archibiz.global. Ray, thank you for the work that you're doing. I appreciate you dedicating your life and your work to making architects' lives better. And so I appreciate you for doing that. And thanks for coming by here again at the Entre Architect Podcast.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Mark, and good luck to you and your team as well, and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. If you liked this episode of Entre Architect Podcast, please share a link to this episode with a friend. Either just click the share button or highlight the URL and send the link to this episode with a friend, because that's how Entre Architect has grown to serve thousands more architects just like you throughout the 10 plus years of Entre Architect. That's how we've grown, architect to architect. So I would love for you to share this episode and all the episodes with one friend every week. Would love that. And thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We don't have an episode if there's no sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. Links to those sponsors, which you should go visit and click, and all the resources that we discussed today for this specific episode, they are all available at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Every episode that we've recorded is there, entrearchitect.com/podcast. Go click the links to the sponsors and say hello. Entre Architect is a member of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You should go visit that at gablemedia.com. That is the next evolution of interactive media and resources for the AEC community. You can now earn continuing education credits for listening to select episodes of this podcast, Entre Architect Podcast. Yes, AIA CEUs for listening to a podcast. It's there, and many other podcasts are there as well, and you can listen to all of them and get credit. Learn more about our program, Gable Members Program, at the gablemedia.com/members website. That's GABL media.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, join us today at Entre Architect Network. That is the worldwide organization for small firm entrepreneur architects. If you own your own architecture firm, you are an entrepreneur architect. You are an Entre Architect. With weekly live group business coaching, we have business coaching there, monthly live business training with AIA CEUs, 2 a month, so 24 AIA credits per year, including 12 of those are HSWs. We have them in the membership. Business resources, all the resources you need to run your business, special session webinars, mastermind groups, and a thriving community of small firm architects just like you. Hundreds of architects are there waiting for you to join. So we provide the support and encouragement you need to succeed as a small firm architect. I know that you haven't been trained as a business person when you launched your firm. That's what we do. Come learn how to run a business at Entre Architect Network. And today you can go join right now for free for 30 days at this link, entrearchitect.com/30 days will give you free 30 days for membership. Go check it out at entrearchitect.com/30 days, and I will see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I want you to remember 3 words: love, learn, share. Have a great day.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark Arlepage, founder of Entre Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.